It might surprise you, but the Open University is a world leader in space science. This black box is a replica of their £5 million instrument that's circling Mars on a probe as we speak. It uses colour to measure tiny amounts of gas in the Martian atmosphere.
Looking to the future, human exploration of Mars is on the horizon, so we need to understand the climate of Mars, the weather on Mars, how the dust moves and is transported, because these things are hazardous to human explorers. So understanding the atmosphere of Mars is critical to human exploration in the future.
Scientists built the instrument here, in Milton Keynes. They use this chamber to test how instruments are going to perform in space. So when you close the door, it creates a vacuum that's as good as anywhere you'll get on Earth. But it also goes down to minus 100 degrees Celsius. In mini mission control next door, they're looking at the Martian weather. Like many UK space projects, a significant proportion of their money comes from the EU.
We have funding for our space missions from the European Space Agency, which is a separate legal entity to the European Union. And it's the funding for our science exploitation that comes from the European Union. And that's the part that's currently uncertain.
Across the corridor, they're building a similar device to look for water on the moon. Eventually, it'll go on a rover and start digging at the lunar South Pole. Again, Brexit's creating some uncertainty.
The rules of the funding is if at any time the number of EU parties drop below 3, then the whole project gets put on hiatus. So at the moment, there's 3 of us, with the UK currently being in the EU, everything's fine. But if we do Brexit, then that number drops. So there's only 2 partners within the EU, and then everything has to stop. So it could be quite interesting in the coming months.
Increased investment in science will be complemented by the development of a new funding agency, a more open visa system, and an ambitious national space strategy.
The government's been making some very positive noises about science recently, promising to make up any money lost from the EU, to increase research and development funding by £7 billion over 5 years, and to make it much easier for talented scientists to get a visa to come and work here. Are you now confident that it's sort of going to be okay in the future, that the government gets it, that they're going to support science?
I think it's reassuring to hear that some science areas have got focus in current government policy and that they are talking about increased funding and increasing the percent of GDP that is spent on research and development is really important. There's still some anxiety. I think we still don't really know. There have been some guarantees from government, but there are also some reports from scientists that it is increasingly difficult to put yourself into a position where you've got lots of EU collaborators who are keen to work with you when you're based out of the UK.
Just north of Cambridge is NIAB, a centre where they patent new varieties of plants like this rapeseed and research problems that affect crops. They lost a £700,000 contract because of the Brexit vote, and they rely on European staff.
So my concern for the visa system, a points-based visa system, is that it'll be fine for the superstars, fine for the high flyers, the people with a PhD, the people with a long track record of publication, the people who are sought after throughout the world. But there are some specialists whose qualifications it would be very difficult to evidence in that way. And those are the people who we would really miss in UK science. So it's just a question of how that point system is implemented. And of course, it's not just the scientists themselves, their partner needs to be able to work as well.
There is optimism at the government's promise to support and bankroll science. But with Royal Society figures showing Brexit has already damaged the UK's ability to get EU funding and talent, there are a few nerves too. Ultimately, many are waiting for much more detail on how a new funding agency and visa system would actually work.